Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 News, and with the Miami Grand Prix just a couple of days away, major updates all across the board. Ferrari looking to match the pace of Red Bull with the upgrades they brought to Imola, and F1 legend Gerhard Berger talking about the internal drama that might be going on with Mercedes, reckoning that George Russell will certainly get on the nerves of Lewis Hamilton if the season continues as it has so far. Very much intriguing your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new as always, I'll greatly appreciate it. Really up to the channel, thank you very much indeed for doing that one. Firstly, just some great drama really going on here around this whole Miami Grand Prix Bay, the Marina Bay, they're trying to make up. Just some hilarious tweets really on about this. Even this one, Craig Sender was just laid down. I don't really know what they're thinking there. There's been all sorts of talk about this the last few days, but there's just too much stuff coming out of it to not mention today. This, for example, as well, no Daniel, no. Please don't go in here because, it's not going to end particularly well. Now, going into this weekend, of course, Red Bull look like they're the fastest car in Imola, no doubt. Whether it will work out the same story for them this weekend, of course, Ferrari, they have their problems to deal with, but, of course, still leading both championships at the present time. This all was kind of cool. Max Verstappen, a new helmet he's got this weekend, new kind of design for Miami, so kind of cool stuff. Unfortunately, McLaren won't be bringing that kind of Miami livery we saw in Rocket League into actual the Miami race itself. That's kind of unfortunate. Speaking of Red Bull real quick though, of course, yesterday we discussed the fact that Red Bull Porsche, they are going to have a partnership we imagine coming up in 2026, and Helmut Marko says, I cannot comment on that with a smile, so probably implying that is, likely to be the case. That is, at least we believe that's going to be the case, right? Maybe on the engine front. What that means for Formula 1, that's certainly another question mark. But there was also some talk from Mr. Dice, kind of their Volkswagen CEO, with Porsche and Audi having partnerships now, it seems, in F1 from 2026. They wanted some German drivers to go along with that, right? So whether in a few years' time Red Bull's kind of partner to Verstappen will be a German driver, I suppose we'll see on that front. And also if, whoever Audi decide to partner up with, Williams has been in discussion, Alfa Romeo, Sauber, and also Aston Martin, I believe, that we looked at yesterday. McLaren seemingly not in the picture any further. This also I thought was rather interesting because, of course, the Red Bull not only gained pace due to seemingly some slightly aerodynamic changes, maybe because the track just suited them slightly better than it did the Ferrari, but also due to some weight upgrades. So Red Bull's updates apparently saved them around 4 kilos. I believe they have more to lose as well. I'm pretty sure Helmut Marko said they have at least 10 kilos to lose, and if they can lose all of that, they'll gain at least 3/4 tenths of a lap time. Interestingly enough, actually, Verstappen's car got this upgrade. Perez's didn't as of yet, which is kind of interesting. So I believe he'll receive the similar update here in Miami, and therefore fair play to Perez, right? The fact that he had a car that was slower than Verstappen's, or let's just say heavier than Verstappen's, and he was still holding off Leclerc relatively comfortably for a time, just does go to show that with this upgrade also to Perez, they could be in a very comfortable position here, Red Bull, of course, if their cars can actually finish the race, which is kind of a key point. But certainly Ferrari will have to do something. We'll talk about them here in a few minutes' time because they have some plans for Miami, but not major plans by any means, right? And it's Barcelona and beyond where they're going to probably bring in some more major updates, and they're going to probably have to work because that's the thing. This season is a battle of development. Ferrari started out very strong, but Red Bull have certainly come with the stronger updates over these last couple of races, and it's putting them in a very good position, especially if some of their upgrades to reliability as well. Let's dive into the Mercedes part of the battle then, because of course so far this season been a very interesting tussle really between, of course, George Russell and Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton really hasn't been pushed that hard by his teammates for quite some years. Of course, the Nico Rosberg days certainly was the case, and then during the Bottas era, it's kind of been a very clear number one, number two. This time around, it's very much a different picture. Russell's been putting Hamilton to the medal effectively, and he's finished top 5 in every single race that he's competed in so far, and has pretty much outshone Lewis Hamilton reasonably across the board. Of course, it was a different story, let's say, in Bahrain at the start of the season, but even then was 3rd, 4th for the team. Hamilton was the one on the podium, and since then it's been very much a different story, right? Russell's had the better of him in, of course, Saudi Arabia. It was a very even Stevens really in Australia. Could have been the other way around. Probably Hamilton would have finished ahead of George in that race if it hadn't been for the whole safety car shenanigans that went down. And then most recently a similar story, bit of a shock of a Hamilton, and Russell again, very consistent, kind of what Hamilton's been for the last few years, putting the car P3, P4, P5, all that type of stuff. John Watson says, look, you just can't state highly what he has done with the state of this car. I know that Russell also has himself has said that the fact that the last few years at Williams been a bit of a tough time helped him, if anything, deal with this tractor that Mercedes are currently making them drive. But Gerhard Berger, a Ferrari legend, I believe he came out maybe twice in at 3rd place in the World Drivers' Championship, obviously back in the late 80s and early 90s. I think he 10-time Grand Prix winner or something like that. So obviously a pretty big name, of course, in the F1 world. And he reckons that Russell is soon going to get on Hamilton's nerves if things continue as they are, because Hamilton, as I say, hasn't really been challenged. He's a winner at heart, there's no doubt. He doesn't accept anything less than first, and there's been some talk from Nico Rosberg, right, that potentially the tensions are rising within the Mercedes camp between Toto Wolff and Lewis Hamilton, and of course, when Russell's outperforming him like he is at the moment, that obviously adds further pressure to Hamilton to be can this guy just slow down a bit, right, to not maybe look so bad effectively. So, it's going to push Hamilton. I think that was kind of Rosberg's point, that Russell performing so well is going to push Hamilton Hamilton on. Like, Wolf reckons, like Toto Wolff reckons, that internally they have a great team dynamic between the two of them. But, you know, at the end of the day, there is going to be some friction there. Hamilton definitely has a history with it with some of his teammates in the past. And Russell is certainly the new kid on the block in that sense. This is what Berger believes. He will soon get on Lewis's nerves. Russell was one of the outstanding drivers at Imola, like Max Verstappen, of course, who got the Grand Slam there, and also Lando Norris. Like, Russell did a phenomenal job in that car. Mercedes slumped this year, obviously hasn't put them in a particularly good spot. And also Berger was commending the job done. But yeah, he will soon get on Lewis's nerves. Interesting comment. Whether he already has or not, it is tough to say, but that's the thing. Like, everyone's talking right now about the fact that the Ferrari versus kind of Red Bull battle, the Charles Leclerc Verstappen battle, is much more cordial than last year's Verstappen Hamilton battle. But you know, you could argue it's just because it's early on in the year. When it gets down to crunch time, when they're level on points going into the final race, things are still going to get pretty spicy. There's no doubt about it, right? And it's a similar thing here, right? It's kind of still early days. Lewis versus George is still nice and buddy on the surface. But look, if things continue what they have done, like how probably Berger has a point as the direction this might actually go. Now, of course, with the drivers' standings, just to look at them real quick, Russell, I believe, was actually in second, kind of crazy, before the most recent race where Red Bull obviously had a stormer there in Imola, and Hamilton down here right now in seventh, right? So definitely some work to be done to catch up his teammates here, and well, it's certainly something which is not going to be easy to do if Russell stays as consistent as he has been. This weekend, of course, in Miami, but Russell has been the only driver to place P5 or better in every single race so far this season. We shall see whether that shall continue, but the Mercedes decent on race pace, but they're going to need to, well, up their game in qualifying, there's no doubt about it. Now, speaking, of course, of, well, Russell's former team in Williams, thought this is kind of interesting, really, because, of course, they do have some sponsors and obligations and stuff to deal with, but they've really been trying to strip back all the paint, as much paint as they possibly can from their car, and most teams are trying to do this, because even, like, if you got rid of the entire paint job, you'd probably save, like, couple of kilos or something just off paint, which is quite a big deal. Now, well, as Williams say, like, please can we strip all the paint off our car to save weight? But apparently their request didn't receive approval, because they've got to obviously, like, do something for the sponsors. They've obviously already removed a lot of it, as you can see by this image right here, but I don't reckon they'll be allowed to get rid of it anymore, and that's the thing. Red Bull have managed to not really strip too much paint off, maybe slightly things here or there, but mainly, like, nothing is gone, but, like, they're still losing a fair bit of weight with some more expensive materials. This type of stuff seems to be working out for them very well indeed so far. We'll talk about how Ferrari are looking to respond here in a second. Wanted to mention this from Vettel, though, of course, because in Imola, we certainly saw that without DRS, it was once again very challenging to overtake. Part of it might well be due to the fact that it was in Imola, right? Like, it was a Grand Prix where generally it's pretty difficult to overtake, especially where that kind of first corner works out, it kinks towards the left, and just the way it was with the rain and everything, meaning there was only really one dry line on the straight the entire race, so you weren't really able to send one down the outside or down the inside and break on the wet part of the track. So it was a bit unfortunate really how everything worked out, but of course when the DRS wasn't activated, there really wasn't any action at all. Even when it was activated, there wasn't all that much going on, to be perfectly honest, but we've certainly seen it in previous races that this issue can follow much closer, and therefore DRS seems, in theory, less necessary, right? I think that honestly in Saudi Arabia and Jeddah it was getting kind of ridiculous, where I'm like, you know, they were battling over that DRS line, as kind of Vettel points out right here. Like, ideally, we should target cars that don't need DRS boost for overtakes to happen. Like, of course, that would probably help if the cars were smaller, slightly lighter in a way as well, like more nimble, let's just say. You could probably do a bit more, whereas now it feels like the only times that overtakes really happen are with DRS. Obviously, there are some exceptions, but it seems to be frustrating the drivers that the likes of Vettel here, as it has been the fans to a degree. But I think they've just got to be more careful with it, because I think DRS still has its place at the moment. I think without it, you get, well, some very boring races, as for example, we just saw in Imola for those, 30 or so laps where it was not activated. But on some tracks, I think they have to kind of scale it back to a degree, right? Because in Imola, there was only one DRS straight, like it wasn't particularly good. In Jeddah, with 3 DRS points, like, it was so easy, if anything, to overtake on the straight when you did have the DRS activated, but like, you didn't want to overtake on the back straight because then they would get you back on the main straight, right? So all this type of stuff is, the mind games, the strategy into it, the tactics, like, does play quite a nice role. But if anything, on certain tracks, they've got to realize, okay, maybe on, maybe Jeddah, just 2 DRS zones, maybe on, maybe we need some more on other circuits or whatever the case might be. But of course, the ideal is that we don't need it at all. But, as he's saying, probably for now, it's not going to happen with DRS off, and see how the racing really is. Didn't seem to work out that too well in Imola, but of course, the track itself maybe wasn't too ideal for a situation like that. So very much intriguing your perspective. Talk about Ferrari real quick as well, just because they've got to try and match what Red Bull are bringing to the party. As Bonotto says, they're looking to bring some small updates to Miami. No main upgrades though as of yet. I believe they're going to come for Barcelona. So we shall see, right? Because at Red Bull, they're ploughing ahead really with these upgrades, and they're not really arriving for Ferrari as of yet. We will not have the main upgrade in Miami, but we still have a few new parts on the car. We're still working on the porpoising that is quite visible, certainly more than Red Bull, right? So that's kind of their thing. The bouncing up and down certainly been an issue that's really been noticed from, even in Saudi Arabia and Jeddah. To be honest, the Ferrari was seemingly bouncing around a fair bit there, certainly in Australia, despite the great results they had at those 2 races. More recently though, in Imola, like, Red Bull seems to have taken a significant step, and that's the thing. If Ferrari aren't bringing some major upgrades, as it seems like they are not, then will they be able to compete at all against the Red Bulls that are seemingly continuing to take strides forward? So that is certainly a question on Ferrari right now. Like, can they bounce back in this weekend? Because, like, if Verstappen and Red Bull have another great weekend, they're already right back in the title fights, but, like, they might even take a stronger grip on it, to be honest, than they already have, right? We'll see how that one develops. This also, as mentioned in Miami, Ferrari will bring some small innovations of adaptation to a track that's considered to be medium to low load. The most important package, though, will be awaited for Barcelona, and apparently a new rear suspension is potentially going to arrive in the second half of the season to extract even more potential from the porpoising issue they're having. So Red Bull, having dealt with that seemingly very early on with their car design, seem to be in a much more stronger position in that they don't really need to worry too much about dealing with that issue in all of their upgrades, as pretty much every other car on the grid pretty much seems to be trying to do. And as we finish out the video, speaking of, teams that have struggled with it, thought this is kind of crazy. Laps completed. So Mercedes are leading the laps completed World Constructors Championship, I don't know, for the season. Certainly the data they're collecting must be out of control, but whether they're able to convert that, that's another story. Alfa right behind them, and then of course, some cars fail to finish races, stuff like this, like McLaren and Daniel Riccardo in Saudi Arabia, I'm pretty sure it was. Same with Bottas, of course, in Saudi Arabia as well. Outside of that, most cars have finished the races. Kind of funny how Red Bull, despite having got a DNFs, a lot of them came right towards the end of the race. They actually haven't lost too many laps, but it's Ferrari way down here at the bottom. So kind of crazy how that works out. Mercedes struggling this year, Ferrari having leading both championships right now, but it's poor Carlos Sainz, who finds himself out of luck, it seems, every single weekend. But very much intrigued your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new as always, take care of yourselves, and I will see you next time.